Jamal's words hang in the living room air. They're heavy as stones. You've become ugly since you had children. Aisha freezes. She can't believe her ears. She looks at his face. His blonde dreadlocks fall over his shoulders. His eyes, which once looked at her with warmth, are now cold and empty. He doesn't shout. He says it quietly, almost casually, as if he's reporting the weather. And that makes it even more painful. He looks at her body, at her face, and his gaze seems to scan for flaws. He sees the stretch marks she hides. He sees the fatigue in her eyes that doesn't go away with sleep. He sees her dreadlocks, which she hasn't spent time on in a long time. Aisha wants to say something. She opens her mouth, but no sound comes out, only a quiet exhalation. She wants to remind him of their children, sleeping in the next room. She wants to shout that he's the one who's tired, that he's the one who's changed, but the words stick in her throat. Jamal waits a few seconds, then he sighs sharply. He runs his hand over his face. He turns and points his finger at the front door. His movement is abrupt and final. "Get out," he says without emotion. "Go away, now." Her world, built over 10 years, collapses in an instant. This sofa on which they laughed, this carpet on which their children crawled, these walls that held their conversations, everything is now alien. Everything is now against her. She feels her legs buckling, but she doesn't fall. Something inside keeps her holding on. She goes to the bedroom automatically. Her hands automatically put a few things in her gym bag. Underwear, a t-shirt, a toothbrush. She takes her old purse, checks her passport. Money. There's not much. A couple of bills. She doesn't think about the future. Her brain refuses to work. She passes the children's room, stops at the door, places her palm on the cold wooden surface. It's quiet behind the door. Her heart is breaking into pieces. But she can't go in. She can't hug them. If she sees their faces now, she'll never be able to leave. And he'll kick her out before their eyes. She won't let that happen. The bag seems unwieldy. Aisha steps out into the hallway. Jamal stands with his back to the window, smoking. He doesn't even look at her. The door of the house she once called her own is now just a barrier between her and the cold night. She clicks the lock. The sound seems impossibly loud. Aisha steps out onto the entrance. The door slams behind her, physically pushing her back. She descends the stairs. Each step feels like emptiness in her chest. She steps outside. The night is damp and cool. She stands on the sidewalk in front of her house. She looks at the windows. The light is on in the living room. He hasn't even gone to the window. She realizes she has nowhere to go. She has no close friends in this city. Her family is far away. She is alone. The house she built is now locked, forever. She turns and walks, wherever her eyes lead her. Her feet carry her along familiar streets. The city that was the backdrop of her life now seems alien and frightening. She walks a few blocks. Her bag chafes her shoulder. She notices a bright light. It's a 24-hour laundromat. The windows are fogged up and the inside is empty. Aisha comes in. The warm air smells of soap and dust. The washing machines hum. She sits down on a plastic chair in the corner. She places her bag between her legs. It's safe here. It's bright here. And there's a roof over our heads. Time drags on endlessly. She watches the washing machines spin. The laundry tumbles behind the glass. The monotonous hum is soothing. But every time a door slams or a footstep sounds outside, she flinches. Her heart pounds. She presses herself against the wall, trying to become invisible. She thinks about the children. How will they wake up in the morning? What will he tell them? That mom is gone? That she's ugly and that's why she's gone? The tears finally break through. They flow down her cheeks quietly and soundlessly. She wipes them with her sleeve. Crying is useless. It won't help. The night passes slowly. She dozes fitfully, waking at every sound. In the morning, her body aches from the awkward position. She goes into the tiny bathroom and washes her face with ice-cold water. She looks in the mirror above the sink. She sees puffy eyes and a face streaked with fatigue. "Ugly!" echoes in her head. She quickly turns away. She's on the street again. She needs to go somewhere. She needs to think, but her thoughts are confused. She walks toward the center, where there are more people, more cafes. Maybe she'll find a job. Any job. She notices a black car. Big, expensive, with tinted windows. It's driving slowly, in the same traffic as her. At first, she doesn't pay attention. Then she notices that he's turning onto another street after her for the second time. Anxiety grips her stomach. Aisha tries to quicken her pace. She turns into a narrow alley. A second later, she hears the soft hum of an engine. A car enters the alley from the other end. She finds herself trapped. Her heart is pounding. She clutches her bag to her chest, ready to run or scream. A black car smoothly pulls up to her and stops. The rear window on the sidewalk rolls down silently. Aisha freezes. It's semi-dark inside the car. In the back, a man is sitting in the seat. He has very straight black hair, falling to his shoulders. His face is high cheekboned and calm. He is wearing a simple dark sweater. He looks at her not as if she were a curiosity, but rather inquisitively, attentively. His gaze glides over her face, her bag, her tense posture. He doesn't smile. He doesn't express pity. "You're freezing," he says. His voice is quiet, even, emotionless. It's not a question. It's a statement of fact. Aisha is silent. She can't move. "Get in the car," he says. There's no threat in his tone, but there's no request either. It's an order, spoken so gently that it's impossible to dispute. She looks at his hands. They lie quietly in his lap, no rings. She looks into his eyes. There is no malice in them. There is only cold clarity. What is worse, to stay here, on the street, without money and a plan, or to get into a stranger's car? She takes a step, then another. Her hand reaches for the doorknob. The door is heavy, opening silently. She sits inside. It's warm, the scent of leather and some barely perceptible spice. The door closes by itself. The man nods to the driver. The car starts moving smoothly. Aisha curls up against the door, trying to take up as little space as possible. "Your name is Aisha," the man says. She flinches. How does he know? "Don't be afraid. Information is my job," he says, not looking at her, looking ahead through the windshield. "You're safe now." She wants to ask where they're taking her, but the words get stuck again. She just sits and watches the familiar streets float by behind the dark glass. The car pulls into the underground parking garage of an upscale residential complex. The elevator ascends to a high floor. A man leads her down a quiet corridor to the only door. He unlocks it with a code. Inside is an apartment, huge, bright, with panoramic windows overlooking the city, and completely empty. No pictures on the walls, no books, no knickknacks, just minimalist furniture. A sofa, a table, a couple of chairs. Everything in shades of white, gray, and black, as if it had just been set up for a photo shoot. It smells of cleanliness and ozone, like after a cleaning. Too sterile, too quiet. There is no life here. "You'll live here," the man says, walking inside. "Everything you need is here." The kitchen is stocked. There's linens in the closet. Aisha stands in the middle of the living room, lost in this empty space. This isn't a home. It's a set. "Who are you?" she finally manages to say. "Min Jun," he replies. "Rest. We'll talk tomorrow." He turns and leaves. The door closes. Aisha hears the soft click of the lock. She is alone, in an unfamiliar place, in a golden cage without bars. She goes to the window. The city lies below, illuminated. She feels small and completely lost. She sleeps poorly on her new, too-hard mattress. In the morning, she finds a paper bag with hot buns and coffee outside the door. No one is there. Min Jun arrives a few hours later. He looks the same as yesterday. Calm, collected. "You'll stay here," he begins without preamble. "It's safe. No one will find you. In exchange, you'll run small errands for me. Sometimes I'll need to deliver something, pick something up, remember something. It's simple. Nothing illegal will happen." He pauses, looking at her, checking if she understands. "This isn't a request. These are conditions." Aisha is silent. She has no choice. Saying no means returning to the street. "Why me?" she asks quietly. Min Jun bows his head slightly. "Because no one needs you. And because you have the eyes of someone who has nothing left to lose. People like that either break or become useful. Let's see what type you are." He says this without cruelty, like a scientist stating a fact. He leaves a simple phone on the table. "Only for calls to me. My number is the only one. Don't call anyone else. For now." And he leaves again. Aisha begins to inspect her new home. Everything is perfectly clean. The kitchen is stocked with new, never-used dishes. The bedroom has an empty closet. She opens it. Sheets, blankets, and towels are neatly folded on the shelves. All are white. She reaches for the top shelf, and her hand brushes against something soft. She pulls it out. It's a woman's robe. Silk, dark burgundy, luxurious to the touch. It's brand new, but it's not her size. It's bigger. She tries it on in her mind. It will hang loosely on her. Who left it? Why is it here? Maybe Min-jun kept someone here before her? Or is this a trap? A test to see if she'll rummage through his things? Aisha carefully folds the robe back, just as it lay. But a feeling of unease has already settled within her. She's not the first in this golden cage. The next morning, food appears in the refrigerator. Fresh produce, packaged in simple paper bags. Fruit, yogurt, chicken, vegetables. They were gone the night before. She didn't hear anyone come in. The door was locked. Aisha checks the front door. The lock is complex. On her side, it only opens from the inside with a key lying on the table. This means someone has their own key, or another way to get in. She scans the apartment, looking for hidden doors, cameras. She finds nothing, but she feels like she's being watched. Not constantly, but sometimes. She feels someone's gaze on her back. She starts behaving properly. She doesn't wander aimlessly. She tries to look busy. She washes the dishes, which are already clean. She dusts. She understands she's being tested, and whoever brings the food is probably reporting her behavior to Min-jun. 3 days later, the phone rings. Min-jun's voice. You'll find a brown envelope on the table in the hallway. Take it to the Pagoda bookstore on 5th Avenue. Give it to the person behind the register. Don't say anything. Just give it to the person and leave. Understood? Understood, Aisha says. Walk. Take your time. Look around. The envelope is ordinary, thin, unsealed. She doesn't look inside. She takes it, puts on a jacket she found in the closet, new with tags her size, and goes out. The Pagoda store is small, cramped, and crammed with shelves. It smells of old books and dust. An elderly Korean man in glasses sits behind the cash register. He reads without raising his head. Aisha approaches. Silently, she places the envelope on the counter. The man slowly looks up at her. His gaze is sharp, searching. He doesn't take the envelope. First, he looks at her for a few seconds, then at the envelope. Then he nods, once, sharply. He takes the envelope and puts it under the counter. He returns to his book. That's it. Not a word. Aisha turns and walks out. She feels his gaze follow her all the way to the door. She walks back, as Min-jun said, unhurriedly. She notices people on the street, notices the same black car driving slowly 2 blocks behind. She is being escorted, or guarded, or followed. She can't tell the difference, but this task was a test of obedience and of how she behaves outside the apartment. On the way back, she stops at a small cafe to warm up. She sits at a table by the window and orders tea. A small television hangs on the wall behind the counter, showing the local news. The announcer talks about a fire. Footage shows a burning garage, a repair shop, flames blazing, fire trucks. Aisha doesn't pay attention at first. Then she hears the address. Her heart skips a beat. She knows this area. It's 3 blocks from her old house, from Jamal's house. The camera pans over a burned-out building. A familiar blue pickup truck sits nearby. It belonged to her neighbor, who was friends with Jamal. They sometimes repaired things there together. The fire happened last night, while she was sleeping in her sterile apartment. No one in the workshop was hurt, but it burned to the ground. The narrator discusses possible causes, faulty wiring. Aisha drinks tea, but can't taste it. Her thoughts are jumbled. Coincidence? Or not? Min-jun found out where Jamal lived. He learned about the workshop, and this fire, an extremely strange coincidence. It evokes not relief, but cold horror. Who does she belong to now? And what price will she have to pay for this roof over her head and food in the fridge? Aisha sits in the living room of an empty apartment. She holds a simple phone. She stares at the black screen. Thoughts of the fire haunt her. She's not sure she wants the phone to ring. A ringing means a new assignment from Min-jun, and that means a new unknown. Now she understands that she is not a guest. She is something like a prisoner with responsibilities. Beautiful, but a prisoner nonetheless. She thinks about the children. Every day this thought is like a sharp knife. She doesn't know how to see them. She's afraid to even try. Min-jun told her not to call anyone. The phone suddenly vibrates in her hand. Aisha flinches. There's an unfamiliar number on the screen. Not the one Min-jun has. Her heart starts beating faster. She swipes her finger across the screen. Hello? She says quietly. There's silence on the line, then heavy breathing. Aisha? The voice is hoarse, familiar. It's Jamal. She catches her breath. She can't utter a word. Is that you? Speak! His voice sounds sharp, nervous. There's not a drop of warmth or remorse in it. Yes, she finally squeezes out. Where are you? He almost growls. It doesn't matter. Everything matters! He shouts into the receiver, and she instinctively moves the phone away from her ear. Do you know what happened? The workshop burned down. Everything I had. Aisha is silent. She doesn't want to talk about it. Listen. Jamal's voice becomes quieter, ingratiating. You didn't talk to anyone there? Maybe you saw someone? Some influential person? The question hangs in the air. Aisha blinks. An influential person. The words sound strange coming from him. He never cared about such things. He only talked about his work, his friends, his problems. What are you talking about? She asks carefully. Don't play dumb, he snaps again. After you left, problems started. Do you understand? Problems. Someone is clearly interested in me. Or you. So if you suddenly found yourself some kind of patron who decided to stick up for you, tell him to leave me alone. Or introduce him. Do you understand? Aisha understands. He's afraid. The fire in the workshop frightened him, and he thinks she has something to do with it, that she's protected now. And his voice doesn't ring with fear for her, but fear for himself, and a strange, selfish hope. He wants to exploit her connections, if she has any. I don't have any protectors, she says evenly. I just left. You're lying, he shouts. Fine, stay in your hole. But if anything happens, you know where to find me. And remember the children. He hangs up. The call ends. Aisha slowly lowers the phone. Her palms are clammy. He didn't ask how she was. He didn't apologize. He only wanted to find out if she could be of use to him now. And he used the children as a bargaining chip. The cold emptiness inside her gives way to a new feeling. Contempt. The next day, Min-jun arrives. He listens to her short, matter-of-fact account of her trip to the bookstore. He nods. Then he asks, Is everything calm? Nothing unusual? He looks at her with his calm eyes. She hesitates for a second. Should she tell him? It might be important, or it might anger him. Jamal called, she says, trying to keep her voice from shaking. Min-jun's expression doesn't change. He waits. He asked if I knew anyone influential. Said he was in trouble. That his workshop burned down. He thinks it has something to do with me. She says this quickly, looking at the floor. When she looks up, she sees something different. She expected interest, questions, but it's not interest that flashes in Min-jun's eyes. It's something else. A cold, quick understanding, as if he'd just added 2 and 2 together and gotten the expected result. His gaze hardens for a split second, then goes neutral again. I see, he says simply. You did the right thing by saying that. He won't call you again. That's all. He doesn't comment on the fire. He doesn't explain what he means by won't. He simply stands up. Rest. There's a new task coming soon, a more interesting one. He leaves. Aisha is left alone with a heavy feeling. She just gave up Jamal. And Min-jun accepted this information as a matter of course, as part of the plan. Fear for the children washes over him again. What does won't mean? After that conversation, Aisha can't sit still. She feels cornered. On all sides are men deciding her fate. Jamal, who discarded her as something useless. Min-jun, who took her as something that might be useful. She walks into the bathroom. She turns on the bright light. A large mirror covering the entire wall reflects her figure. For months, she had avoided mirrors. After Jamal's words, her reflection hurt. She saw only flaws. Now she forces herself to look. The long, light dreadlocks do indeed look unkempt and dull. Her face is thin, with dark circles under her eyes. Her shoulders are weighed down by fatigue. She sees it, but she also sees something else. Eyes. The eyes staring back at her from the mirror are full not of the beauty Jamal was looking for, but of something else. There's a depth to them that was once obscured by the veil of daily worries and the fear of not pleasing. There's a quiet, growing rage in them. And determination. She sees a woman who's been through humiliation, a night on the streets, the fear of the unknown. A woman who's still standing. She's not ugly. She's exhausted, but alive. So very alive. She runs her fingers over her cheeks, along the line of her jaw. For the first time in a long time, she doesn't turn away. She studies herself, and in this study, something solid is born. The resentment begins to melt into something else. A new assignment arrives the next day. Min-jun gives her the address of a cafe in the business district. Sit at a table by the window at exactly 3 o'clock. 2 men will sit next to you. They will talk about something. You don't need to eavesdrop on them. Just remember everything you hear. Their names, if they mention them. The gist of the conversation. The details. Then you can come back and tell me. She nods. It's easier than carrying envelopes. And Aisha, he adds, already turning to the door. Don't write it down. Just remember, everything at the cafe unfolds as planned. At precisely 3 o'clock, two men in business suits sit down at the next table. They begin discussing the deal. They talk about deliveries, containers, deadlines, the quality of the product. She drinks her coffee and looks out the window, but every word is imprinted in her head. She's always been good at this. She memorized shopping lists, children's schedules, the smallest details. Jamal laughed at this, calling her a walking notepad. 40 minutes later, the men leave. Aisha returns to the apartment. That evening, Minjun arrives. She tells him everything in detail. She remembers the names, Mark and Stephen. She remembers the container numbers. She remembers that the goods had to be first class, and that Stephen had doubts about the supplier because of last year's delay incident. She speaks for about 10 minutes. Minjun listens without interrupting. When she finishes, he is silent for a few seconds, looking at her. Did you give the exact container number? He asks. Yes, she nods. CG-7841-L. And Stephen said the incident took place in October of last year? Yes, in mid-October. He said after the rains. Minjun leans back in his chair. A barely perceptible movement appears on his lips, not a smile, but something like its shadow. Perfect, he says finally. You have a perfect memory for detail. That's rare. Most people only hear the general meaning. You hear the facts. His words come not as a compliment, but as an assessment of the instrument's qualities. But something inside Aisha responds to this. For the first time in many years, her ability, which had been ridiculed, has proven valuable, useful. She feels a strange surge of strength. She can be useful not as a wife, not as a mother, but as herself. This new strange confidence crumbles that evening. She decides to go through her old gym bag, hoping to find something that will remind her of her children. She dumps everything on the bed, clothes, a passport, a makeup bag. She rummages around the bottom of the bag, searching for a small tattered photograph. She's not here. Horrified, she shook out her bag again, turned out the pockets. Nothing. There was only one photo. In it, she was with two children in the park, a year ago. She was smiling. The children were laughing. It was her secret talisman, her proof that happy times were real. Panic grips her throat. Could she have dropped it? No, she definitely put it in her bag that terrible day. She searches the entire apartment, looks under the bed, under the sofa. Nothing. The photograph is gone. Her first thought was Minjun, or one of his men. They took her. They took the last thread connecting her to her past life, so that she would belong entirely to them, so that there would be nothing to look back on. She sits down on the floor in the empty living room and bites her fist to keep from screaming. It hurts more than when Jamal kicked her out. This is the theft of her memory, her love. She feels completely empty. The strength she felt today is evaporating. She is once again just an object from which everything can be taken. She barely sleeps. In the morning, her eyes are red as she goes to the kitchen to make tea, and she freezes in the doorway. On the table, in the middle of a perfectly clean surface, lies a photograph. She slowly approaches. She picks it up. It's the same photograph. There's no damage to it. It just lies there, as if someone had just placed it there. Aisha's heart is pounding. She turns the photo over. On the back, in neat, almost calligraphic handwriting, is written in black ink, "They are safe. Don't worry." Nothing else. No signature, no threats. Just these 5 words. She stands, clutching the photograph in her trembling fingers. Who wrote this? Minjun? The one who brings the food? The message is both comforting and terrifying. They know what's important to her. They watched her, saw her panic. Did they take the photograph to test her reaction, or to let her know they had control over even this? But they returned it, and they gave her a guarantee of safety, the most important guarantee for her. She doesn't know whether to believe it, but she has no choice. She clutches the photograph to her chest. Tears of relief mingle with tears of impotent rage. Her children are now pawns in a game whose rules she doesn't know. But as long as they're pawns, they're safe. It's a strange, terrible comfort. It's not Minjun who arrives that day. A woman arrives. Stern, middle-aged, carrying a suitcase on wheels. She introduces herself as Lee. "Mr. Min asked me to get you cleaned up," she says without a smile. Aisha doesn't resist. Lee works quickly and professionally. She doesn't touch the dreads or suggest cutting them off. Instead, she carefully unravels them at the roots, cleans, moisturizes, and restyles them into defined, beautiful curls. They feel lighter, as if a heavy crown of dirt and neglect has been lifted from her hair. Then, Elle takes clothes out of the suitcase. Simple, expensive items, dark trousers, silk blouses, a high-quality sweater, all in her size. Everything is chosen to emphasize not beauty, but composure and rigor. After Elle leaves, Aisha approaches the mirror again. The reflection is different from what she saw 2 days ago. Her dreadlocks look like a part of her again, like an adornment, not a symbol of decadence. Her clothes fit perfectly. They conceal her thinness, enhancing her figure. She looks collected, businesslike, serious. She turns in front of the mirror. For the first time in a long time, she doesn't want to turn away. She doesn't feel beauty. She feels strength, the strength of a person who is being courted for a reason, who is needed for a cause. She irons the sleeve of her silk blouse. This is the uniform for a new life, and she decides to wear it with dignity. The next day, Aisha decides to go for a short walk, just to get some fresh air. She leaves her building and walks down the street. The weather is cool. She spots a playground in the distance and pauses for a second, but then turns away. She feels a gaze, not a paranoid feeling, but a real one. She slows down. She stops at a store window, pretending to examine the merchandise. In the reflection, she sees a man. He's standing across the street, leaning against the wall. He's wearing a dark jacket, his hands in his pockets. He's not reading a newspaper, not talking on the phone. He's simply standing there, looking her way. This is not a policeman. This is a security guard, Min Jun's man. Before, she would have been afraid. She would have hurried back to her cage. Now she feels something different. She slowly turns and meets his gaze across the street. She doesn't smile. She just looks. Then she nods slightly, almost imperceptibly, as if to say, "I see you." The man in the jacket doesn't move, but after a second, he nods slightly in response. Just once. Then he turns away and pretends to look somewhere else. Aisha turns and calmly walks back to the house. She's not being guarded. She's being watched. And now she knows the faces of her watchers. It's a small but important step. She's no longer a passive object. She's starting to learn the rules of the game. Jamal appears from around the corner. He looks terrible. His blonde dreadlocks are disheveled. His eyes are red. His face is haggard. He sees her and stops dead in his tracks. Then his face contorts with anger. "There you are," he hisses, coming closer. "I've been running all over town. You live here, in the posh neighborhood. I knew it!" Aisha takes a step back, pressing herself against the door. The fear returns, old and familiar. "Go away, Jamal. Go away!" He laughs hoarsely. "You made a fool of me. You found yourself some fat cat, and you think you're a queen now? You're my wife. You're coming home. Now!" He grabs her arm above the elbow. His fingers dig into her arm through the thin fabric of her blouse. It hurts. "Let go," she says sharply, trying to break free. "You're not going anywhere." He pulls her along with him. At that moment, a shadow detaches itself from the wall of a nearby house. It's the same man in the dark jacket she saw earlier. He approaches quickly and silently. He stands between Aisha and Jamal. Jamal freezes. He looks at the stranger. He sees his calm, expressionless face. He sees his posture, his composure. "It's none of your business," Jamal mutters, but his voice no longer holds its former confidence. The man in the jacket doesn't answer. He simply looks at Jamal's hand, which is still clutching Aisha's. There's a pause for a few seconds. Jamal looks at the man, then at Aisha. He sees her new clothes, her gathered dreadlocks, her direct gaze. He sees that she is not screaming, not crying. She simply looks at him, and there is no fear in her eyes. There is coldness. Jamal slowly, as if against his will, unclenches his fingers. He lets go of her hand. He takes a step back. "Okay," he mutters. "Okay. You'll come back to me on your own. You'll see." He takes one last angry look at the silent man, turns around, and almost runs away, staggering. Aisha stands, rubbing her numb arm. She's breathing heavily. Min Jun's man turns to her. "Everything okay?" His voice is low, emotionless. She nods, unable to speak. "I'll take you up," he says. It's not an offer. He walks her to the apartment door. He leaves without another word. Aisha goes inside, locks the door tightly, and leans her back against it. Her heart is pounding, but it's not just from fear. It's from relief. Someone has stood between her and her past, and the past has retreated. Min Jun arrives in the evening. He looks at her hand, where a bruise in the shape of her fingers is already appearing. He won't be coming anymore, Minjun says simply. Who is he? This man? She asks. One of my employees. No. Who is Jamal? Really? Her voice sounds firmer than she expected. Minjun looks at her silently. Then he makes a slight gesture, inviting her to sit. He sits down opposite her. Do you want to know the truth? He asks. Yes. Your husband, Minjun begins slowly, owed money. A lot of money. Not to the bank, to bad people, people who don't forgive debts. Aisha listens, motionless. He had a choice, work it off or face the consequences. He agreed to work it off. You were supposed to be part of the debt. He pauses, letting her understand. Aisha doesn't understand. Me? As part of the debt? You were supposed to be taken, as security, or as payment. It doesn't matter. What matters is that when these people sent their man to assess the asset, he saw you and rejected you, said you were not suitable, that you were out of shape, too exhausted, too depressed. Not like the photos they were shown. The words cut into her like a knife. She sits, speechless. Jamal was furious. He thought he'd give you up and the debt would be written off. But you failed the assessment. You became a burden to him twice over. First, as a wife who had gone bad. Then, as a product to be rejected. So he kicked you out. He had no use for you anymore. Not as a wife, not as currency. A deathly silence descends on the room. Aisha hears only the beating of her own heart. Everything falls into place. His coldness, his words about her being ugly. It wasn't just cruelty, it was a statement of fact. He tried to sell her, and she wasn't bought. At first she feels nothing. Emptiness. Then a wave comes, not sadness, not despair. Hot, white, all-consuming rage. She's not crying. Her body is tense to the point of trembling. She clenches her fists so tightly that her nails dig into her palms. She was a thing. Her marriage, her life, her body. It was all just a deal that fell through. Jamal hasn't fallen out of love with her. He just couldn't trade her for what he deserved. All the pity, all the regret, all the pain she'd been hoarding evaporates. In their place, only cold, razor-sharp anger remains. And with it comes clarity, complete and absolute. She looks at Minjun. He doesn't try to comfort her. He just waits. Why are you telling me this? Her voice sounds alien, even. Because you asked. And because the truth makes a person stronger. Now you know where you started. Now you can decide where to go next. You can disappear. I'll give you money, documents, a new name and city. You will never see him or me again. Or you can stay. And use that fury in your eyes for something useful. Aisha doesn't need time to think. The decision comes instantly. Running away means returning to zero. To fear, to helplessness. She's already been there. She doesn't want to start from scratch. She wants to write a new text over the old, damaged one. She lifts her head and looks directly into Minjun's eyes. There is no longer any uncertainty in her gaze. I'm staying, she says clearly, but not as a victim you picked up, not as free help in exchange for shelter. She pauses, collecting her thoughts. I want to work with you. Really. I see things. I remember. I don't crack under pressure. I want to be an asset, a useful asset, on your terms, but with my understanding. Minjun looks at her for a long moment, then he nods slowly. For the first time, something resembling respect appears in his eyes. Okay, he says. Let's start small, with the real deal. Tomorrow. The next day, he gives her new instructions, more detailed ones. There will be a private viewing this evening at the Horizon Contemporary Art Gallery. You will enter as a guest. Your task is to observe. Remember the faces of the people who approach a man named George Song. He will be wearing a blue jacket. Remember who speaks to him, for how long. Their mood. After the event, you will describe everything in detail. He gives her an invitation addressed to her. Aisha. Reynolds. And the black dress that Li brings. It is simple, elegant, and does not attract unnecessary attention. In the evening, Aisha enters the gallery. White walls, soft lighting, quiet music, people holding glasses. She takes a glass of water and slowly moves around the room. She finds George Song. He really is wearing a blue jacket. She finds a comfortable spot, near the sculpture, from where she can see the entire room. She doesn't stare, she looks absent-mindedly, but her mind works like a recording device. A man with gray hair at the temples approaches George. They talk for 3 minutes. They laugh. Then a woman in red approaches. The conversation is more tense. She gestures. George shakes his head. Then a young man comes in. They speak in whispers, barely moving their lips. George nods. The man leaves. Aisha notices details. The gray-haired man wears a wedding ring, but on his right hand. The woman in red has a small star tattoo on her right ankle. The young man rubs his left thumb when he's nervous. June said, then she calmly leaves. At home, she sits down and writes everything down from memory. She doesn't know their names, but she describes everyone so they're recognizable. She records the time, the length of conversations, and gestures. When Min-jun arrives, she reads him her report, detailed without emotion. The woman in red mentioned logistical issues and an invoice from Hong Kong. The young man said just one phrase, which I understood, waiting for confirmation. Min-jun listens without interrupting. When she finishes, he falls silent. Perfect, he repeats. But this time it sounds different. It's not a memory assessment, it's a performance assessment. You did flawlessly. Aisha doesn't smile. She simply nods. She feels tired, but she also feels something new, a sense of belonging. She's taken her first real step into a new world, and she's taken it firmly. Aisha finishes her report. Min-jun listens and nods. He tells her it's time to go. He'll leave first. She should leave quietly, through the main entrance. She does so. She walks through the gallery hall, heading for the exit. To avoid attracting attention, she turns into a short corridor leading to the service exit and restrooms. It's quieter here. Only the muted music from the main hall can be heard. She's almost to the exit when she hears voices. Men's muffled, coming from behind the half-open door of the utility room. He's too confident. That Korean guy. Min-jun, says one voice, low and slightly accented. He's got a new card. That girl, blonde dreadlocks, saw the way she looked at Song, replies a second younger one. New? Where from? Nobody knows. Came out of nowhere. He's hiding her. But she's already working. That's the problem. We need to find out who she is, and how loyal she is, or vulnerable. Aisha freezes, pressed against the wall. Her heart is pounding. They're talking about her. She's the problem. Maybe we should talk to her, carefully, through someone else. Too risky. Min-jun will figure it out right away. Better to watch and wait. Everyone has a weak spot. Footsteps echo inside the room. They're about to leave. Aisha pushes off the wall and quickly, but silently, walks out the service door onto the street. The cold air stings her face. She walks without looking back, feeling someone's gaze glued to her back. At home, a shudder runs through her. It's not fear, it's realization. She's not just an assistant. She's already a pawn on a larger board, and the other players have noticed her. The words problem and weak spot ring in her head. Her weak spot is the children, but Min-jun is protecting them. Or is he using them as leverage? She doesn't know, but now she understands the game has become serious, and the stakes have risen. The next day, she tells Min-jun what she heard. She sits across from him in the empty living room and recounts the dialogue clearly, without emotion. She expects to see surprise or anger on his face, but Min-jun doesn't look surprised. He listens, his face impassive. When she finishes, he slowly exhales smoke from the cigarette he never smokes in front of her, but now lights. Those were the voices of Matthew and young Lee, he says calmly, as if commenting on the weather. Aisha remains silent. He knew. Matthew has been working for me for 5 years. Young Lee is his protege, Min-jun continues. He looks not at her, but out to the window at the city at night. In my world, there are always traitors. It's like a law of physics. The only question is when they will reveal themselves and what price will be paid for them. He turns to her. You did the right thing, what you said. You're in the game now, for real. They know about you, and I know about them. There's no comfort in his words. There's a cold calculation. Aisha understands that she's just passed on valuable information, and that she's now on his side not out of necessity, but by fact. She's uncovered a conspiracy. She's become an ally in his silent war. 2 days later, Min-jun gives her a new, seemingly simple task. She must meet a man named Arno at a small cafe on the outskirts of town. Arno will give her a box of antique porcelain samples for appraisal. She must simply take the box and bring it to Min-jun. It's simple, too simple, but the details are alarming. The meeting is scheduled for late evening. The cafe is in an area Aisha doesn't know, industrial and deserted at this time of day. Min-jun emphasizes, Arno will be alone, in a dark jacket and a cap. He'll find you himself. Her intuition screams danger. Her entire being tenses. This smells like a trap. Why is Min June always so cautious, sending her alone into a darkened area to retrieve some box? Why should Arno find her and not the other way around? She looks at Min Juna, trying to read his face, but his is a stony mask. Are you afraid? He asks bluntly. I'm cautious, she retorts. Caution is good, but sometimes you have to step into the darkness to understand what's hidden there. This task is important. His words sound like a hint, as if he's waiting for her to refuse, or as if he's testing whether she trusts him enough to take a risk. She thinks of the children, of the photograph with the caption, "They're safe." She thinks of the words problem and weak spot. I will do it, she says firmly. The cafe, at Angelina's, turns out to be a semi-closed establishment with a single dim lamp above the sign. Inside, only a neon bulb above the counter glows. Aisha enters. The room is empty. Her heart is pounding. She sits at a table by the window so she can see the entrance and the street. 5 minutes later, not one, but two people enter the cafe. One is wearing a dark jacket and cap. He must be Arno. The other is a large man in a tracksuit with cold eyes. They walk straight up to her table and sit down without an invitation. Are you Aisha? Arno asks. His voice is rough. She nods. Where's the box? I have to get it from you. She reminds him of the condition. Arno grins. His partner looks at her silently. The box isn't the point, darling. The point is to talk. Our mutual friend wants to know how you're doing. How's the new job going? Is it hard? They know. They know exactly who she is. It's not Arno. It's the ones who followed her to the gallery. Or their people. It's okay, she says, trying to keep her voice from shaking. Minjun, are you happy? Does he trust you too much? Arno leans across the table. He smells of sweat and cheap tobacco. The pressure is mounting. They want information. They want to intimidate her. They want to test her weakness. Fragments of thoughts flash through Aisha's mind. She recalls Minjun's words. You have a perfect memory for detail, and the cold tone in which he spoke of traitors. She takes a deep breath and decides to bluff. She leans back in her chair, trying to look calm, even bored. Mr. Min values precision, she says evenly. He knows, for example, that Matthew met a man named Carlo in a pool hall on 5th Street last Tuesday, that they discussed shipments through the old port, and that young L received an incomprehensible money order that same day. She's making it all up as she goes. The billiard room, Carlo, the old port, these are just snippets of conversation she could have overheard anywhere, but she says it with absolute certainty, looking Arno straight in the eye, as if it were an immutable truth known to both her and Min Jun. Arno's face changes. Confidence gives way to confusion, then fear. He exchanges glances with his partner. They weren't expecting this. They were expecting a frightened woman, someone they could intimidate. What they got was someone who seemed to know more than they did. What? What are you talking about? Arno mutters. I think you understand perfectly, Aisha says, standing up. Her legs are shaking a little, but she keeps her back straight. You'll probably bring the box another time. Tell Matthew that Mr. Min appreciates his past services, but everything has a time limit. She turns and walks toward the exit, expecting a strong hand to grab her shoulder, but no one stops her. She steps outside. The cold air stings her lungs. She takes a few steps, and then 3 people emerge from around the corner of the neighboring building. Strangers. She freezes, preparing for the worst. But one of them, the same man in the dark jacket who had been guarding her outside her house, makes a slight gesture with his hand. This way, quickly. He leads her to a black SUV parked in the alley. The doors open. Get in, says a familiar voice from the darkness inside. It's Min Jun. The car starts moving as soon as she steps inside. She looks out the window. She sees 2 more cars pull up to the cafe. People get out and quickly walk inside. It's over, Min Jun says calmly, looking ahead. He takes her not to the empty apartment, but to another, more comfortable and lived-in penthouse with a view of the river. A fireplace is burning in the living room. He invites her to sit. You didn't take the box, he says. It wasn't there, she replies. Her voice still trembles slightly with adrenaline. And you didn't run. And you didn't crack. You bluffed. And it worked. He pours her cognac into a small shot glass. He hands it to her. Was it a test? She asks, already understanding the answer. Yes, a test for you. And a trap for them. Matthew and his people thought they could convert you or intimidate you. We gave them that opportunity. The cafe was wiretapped and had cameras. Everything they said, and your reaction, it was all recorded. You were bait. Very effective. Aisha sips cognac. The warm liquid burns her throat, but soothes her trembling. You took a risk on me, she says without reproach, simply stating a fact. I was assessing you, he corrects. You said you wanted to be an asset. Assets must pass stress tests. Today you passed. You didn't crack under direct pressure. You used your wits and my name as weapons. You're perfect for this job. The word perfect sounds different now. It's not about memory, it's about character, about the steel he saw in her, and tempered in the fire today. She looks at the flames in the fireplace. The feeling of fear fades. It's replaced by a strange, cold calm. She's been through this, and she's won. From that day on, something within her finally breaks and reassembles. The last shadow of uncertainty, the last hint of sacrifice, disappears. Her movements become smoother and more precise. Her gaze becomes sharp. Scanning. She learns to discern the slightest nuances in people's behavior, in the intonation of their voices. She observes how Minjun works, how he constructs dialogue, how he divides the world into the useful and the useless. She begins to see threats where before she only saw people. She learns to sense lies. She becomes quiet, attentive, and, as she later realizes, very dangerous to those who stand in her way. She is Minjun's new weapon, and she embraces this role with cold clarity. A week later, Jamal arrives at the new penthouse. They don't let him in, but he shouts under the windows, demanding to see him. Minjun looks at Aisha. Your decision, he says. Let him come in. Into the hall, she says. She descends into the spacious hall on the first floor. Jamal stands in the middle, miserable and angry. He's lost even more weight. His clothes are wrinkled. Seeing her, he takes a step forward, but stops when he notices two silent men at the door. Aisha, he begins, his voice no longer holding its former strength, only a break. I need help. They took everything. The workshop, the car. You have to. She looks at him, not with hatred, with emptiness, as if he were a stranger blocking her way. I don't have money for you, Jamal, she says evenly. Not money. Connections. Ask your boss. Let him have a word with them. Just one word. You're rich now, I can see it. He gestures, looking at her clothes, at the expensive decor of the hall. Aisha slowly approaches him. She sees in his eyes only fear for himself, not a drop of remorse, not a thought for children, only the desire to use her again. You were wrong, she says quietly, so only he can hear. You threw me away because I was damaged goods. Now I'm no longer a commodity, and certainly not yours. She turns to leave. And the children, he croaks after her. Have you completely forgotten about them? She stops, slowly turns around. There's no pain or anger on her face, only icy contempt. You robbed me of my children. You used them as a bargaining chip. Don't ever say that word in my presence again. I'm no longer interested in you. If you show up here again, you'll be carried out. And this time, you won't be able to leave on your own. She climbs the stairs without looking back. Behind her, she hears the men take Jamal by the arms and gently but firmly lead him outside. The door closes. She stands on the stairs, listening to the silence in her heart. There is no pain there. There is only a quiet, final farewell. A few days later, Minjun calls her to his office. Not his apartment, but a proper office in the business center. He offers her the chance to head up a new business, the legal import of antiques from Asia. It's a clean business, he explains, but a complicated one. You need to understand things, documents, and people. You need instinct. I've seen how you assess a situation and people. Give it a try. She agrees, not out of gratitude, but out of curiosity. She immerses herself in books and catalogs, studies the market, and learns to distinguish fakes from originals by subtle details. And in this, she discovers her talent. Her perfect memory now works to attribute objects. Her newfound cool observation helps her spot lies in the eyes of sellers. She closes her first deals, small ones at first, then larger ones. The business begins to turn a profit. Her relationship with Minjun changes. He no longer gives her assignments. They discuss business. He consults with her on certain matters. They become partners, not equals. He is still an empire, and she is an important part of it. But the look in his eyes when he listens to her reports or her analysis of the situation reveals more than just satisfaction. It reveals the deepest respect. He created her, but she has exceeded his expectations. She has become a force in her own right. A year later, Aisha stands in the center of a spacious, bright gallery in an upscale neighborhood. The walls are lined with exquisite pieces of Oriental art that she personally selected. This is her project, her brainchild. She is dressed in a perfectly tailored ivory suit. Her dreadlocks are styled into a complex, elegant hairstyle. She speaks to a client, a Japanese collector. Her speech calm, her arguments impeccable. Two women in evening gowns pass by. One leans toward the other and whispers, nodding toward Aisha. I heard she's connected to that group, with Min Jun. They say she's his right-hand woman, or something more. Aisha hears this. She doesn't turn her head. She finishes talking to the client, exchanging business cards. Then her gaze slides toward the women. She catches the gaze of the one who is whispering, and she smiles. It's not a warm smile. It's cold, confident, a barely perceptible curve of the lips that bodes ill for anyone who stands in her way. The woman turns pale, looks away, and quickly leads her friend away. Aisha returns to examining the exhibit. She's perfect, not in the way Jamal wanted, and not in the way Min Jun initially assessed. She's perfect for this new world she's chosen, a world of quiet strength, precise calculations, and impeccable control. She's home. Aisha escorts the Japanese collector to the door, exchanging a few last polite words. The door closes, and silence descends upon the gallery, broken only by the soft hum of the climate control system. She stands in the center of the room, feeling a familiar calm. The whispers behind her no longer evoke tremors or anger. They are simply background noise, a sign of her status. She turns and walks into her office on the second floor. It's a spacious room with a panoramic window. On the desk sits a laptop, several folders, and a small Joseon-era figurine, her first successful independent purchase. She sits down and checks her email. Among the emails from auction houses and consignors, one stands out, no subject, from an unknown address. The body of the email reads just one line: Inheritance requires attention. Ready to discuss. V.S. George Song. The man in the blue jacket from the gallery a year ago, the one she'd been watching back then. Over the course of a year, their paths crossed several times on neutral ground, at social receptions, openings. They exchanged cold formalities. Min Jun warned, Song is neither a friend nor an open enemy. He's a force in his own right, with whom one sometimes has to negotiate, but one who always seeks out weakness. Aisha doesn't reply to the letter right away. She calls Min Jun. He picks up on the second ring. George Song wrote, he wants to discuss the inheritance, she says without preamble. There's a brief pause on the other end of the line. What exactly? Just that phrase. No details, no context. Interesting. Inheritance could be anything. A collection, a business, debts. He's testing the waters. He wants to see how you'll react. And he wants to talk to you, not me. This is a new level of recognition. Aisha looks at the statuette on the table. How should I react? Your decision. You control this direction. But remember, Song doesn't do anything without a reason. Every word he says has a price and a hidden meaning. We can meet, only on neutral territory, and only with our people nearby. Don't show any interest. She hangs up. An hour later, she sends a terse reply. We're discussing it. I suggest meeting at Club Brooklyn tomorrow at 4 p.m. AR Club Brooklyn is a closed art space, her territory in a symbolic sense. She rents a small office there for meetings. The answer comes almost instantly. Okay, see you tomorrow. V.S. The next day, at exactly 4 o'clock, Aisha enters the Brooklyn Club. It is a converted A-loft with high ceilings. Her coworker, a young woman named Clara, greets her at the entrance. Mr. Song is already here. He's waiting in the blue room. Would you like some coffee? Go ahead, and come back in 10 minutes under the pretext of an urgent call. Understood. The blue room is a small conference room with a soft sofa and armchairs. George Song sits in a chair with his back to the window. He's wearing a dark blue suit, no jacket. He looks calm and collected. Aisha, nice to see you, he says, standing. His handshake is firm and dry. George, she nods, sitting down opposite him. They chat for a minute about innocuous matters, a new exhibition in the city, the rising prices on the art market. Clara brings coffee and leaves. Aisha waits. I appreciate your time, Song begins, putting down her cup. So I'll get down to business. I've had the opportunity to acquire a certain collection. It's complex. It consists of items of varying provenance. Some pieces may be questionable in terms of provenance. I need an expert who can not only assess authenticity, but also skillfully package the story for future sale. Someone with an impeccable reputation in legitimate business and an understanding of the finer nuances. He looks at her, gauging her reaction. Aisha maintains a neutral expression. Controversial provenance, in his language, often means illegal origin. To package a story means to create a legal legend for a product. Why did you come to me? She asks. Because you're not just an expert, you're part of Minjun's structure. That provides certain guarantees, and because you have impeccable taste and a cool head, this job requires both. He offers her the position of curator of this collection. The percentage of future sales is substantial, but there's a condition: complete confidentiality. Even Min Jun mustn't know the details until a certain stage. Is this a loyalty test? Aisha asks bluntly. Song smiles, but his eyes remain cold. This is an offer of mutually beneficial cooperation. You gain independence within our shared world. I get the right person in the right place. Min Jun will ultimately receive his share through you. Everyone wins. At that moment, the door opens, and Clara peers out cautiously. Excuse me, Aisha. You have an urgent call from the office about the Chinese party. Aisha excuses herself and steps out into the hallway. There's no ringing, of course. It was a prearranged signal. She stands against the wall, giving herself a moment to consider. Song's offer is a direct path to big money and risk. It's a step toward becoming an independent player, not just a right hand, but it's also a test of betrayal. Min Jun warned, Song always looks for weakness. Weakness is ambition, greed, the desire for power. She returns to the room. George, I'm grateful for the offer, but I have a principle. I don't work with confidentiality against my partner. If the project is interesting, I'll discuss it with Min Jun. If he sees potential, we can work together. I can act as a curator, but within the framework of our shared interests. Song's face doesn't change, but something flickers in his eyes. Perhaps disappointment, perhaps respect. Straightforward. Min Jun trained you well. I made this decision myself, she corrects coldly. Well then, discuss it with him. But remember, the window of opportunity is short-lived. My offer remains open until the end of the week. They say goodbye with icy politeness. Aisha leaves the club and immediately calls Min Jun, recounting the conversation in detail. He listens silently. You did the right thing, he says when she finishes. He wanted to drive a wedge between us, or create a secret channel of influence. You prevented him from doing so. Now he knows you're not the weak link. That's important. But be prepared. He won't back down. He'll try a different approach. Aisha's gallery. No return address. Inside is an old, tattered book of children's poems in Korean. The very same one her grandmother read to her as a child in America. The book had been lost many years ago. Attached is a blank sheet of paper. Written on it, in familiar calligraphy, the same one on the back of the photograph, is, Memory is also an inheritance. Shall we discuss it? V.S. A chill ran down Aisha's spine. He wasn't just following her. He was digging deep into her past. He found something she'd almost forgotten. The book isn't a threat. It's much more subtle. It's a hint that he knows her roots, her weaknesses, her nostalgia. It's an invitation to talk on a different level, not as a business partner, but as someone with a past. She puts the book in the desk drawer. She doesn't answer, but she understands that the game has entered a new phase. George Song has moved from testing to a full-fledged siege, and his weapon isn't money or threats. His weapon is knowledge, and against this weapon, she has no reliable defense yet. She knows his business, but he seems to know her soul, and that makes him more dangerous than any open enemy. Aisha closes the desk drawer with the book. Her fingers tremble slightly, but it's from rage, not fear. He's crossed a line. Childhood memories aren't business. They're an invasion. She gets up and goes to the window. The city lives its own life. She can't let Song think he's led her astray. She needs to act, but not in the way he expects. Not emotionally, calculatingly. The office is silent. She returns to her desk and opens her laptop. She doesn't reply to the email. Instead, she makes 3 calls. The first is to her contact in the archives for immigration records. The second is to an old antique dealer in Seoul who knows everything about old Korean families. The third is to Min Jun. She tells him about the book, without panic, just as a fact. He's exploring your weaknesses, Min Jun says. His voice is calm. I know, but he has a past, too, and a family. We just need to dig deeper. Be careful. If you start digging into him, he'll take it as a declaration of war. He's already started the war, Aisha says firmly. He just thinks I won't notice. The next day, she receives her first piece of information from an antique dealer. The Song family name isn't uncommon, but one family is well known in certain Seoul circles, a bankrupt branch of the aristocracy. Rumor has it they sold all their relics in the 1990s to pay off massive debts. Their son, George, left for abroad. There are no further details, but it's a start. Meanwhile, she continues to work. She holds meetings, closes deals. Everything is as usual. She even uses proxies to buy a small lot at an auction where Song's company is listed. Nothing important, just to show she's aware of his affairs. A week passes. The Song doesn't make a sound. The silence is also pressure. That evening, as she prepares to close the gallery, a courier arrives with a small envelope. Inside is a key to a safety deposit box. And again, a note in the same handwriting. What you're looking for isn't in the books. Box 114. Password 7832. She holds the cold metal of the key in her hands. It's too simple. A trap? Or another move in his strange game? She can't ignore it. But going alone is foolish. She calls her bodyguard Chan, the same one who once nodded to her on the street. Now he's her permanent guard. We need to look at a locker, officially, with all the necessary procedures. But quickly and quietly, Chan takes the key and nods. He leaves. Aisha remains waiting in her office. Every minute drags on. She's not afraid for herself. She's afraid that Song has outsmarted her, that this is some elaborate provocation. An hour later, Chan returns. He's holding a small, tightly packed archive box. This is all there is in the locker. There were no surveillance teams or suspicious individuals nearby. She opens the box. Inside are no money or jewelry. They're folders with documents, old, yellowed. She opens the first one. This is a private investigator's report, dated the year of her marriage to Jamal. The report contains photographs of Jamal, his financial connections, his debts at the time, and the last page, a recommendation for the client. The recommendation reads, the target, Jamal, is unreliable. Any long-term commitment with him is risky. His wife, Aisha, is not an asset and is emotionally dependent. The commissioner of the report is not specified, but it becomes clear that someone was investigating Jamal back then, and they concluded that Aisha useless. She leafs through other folders, extracts, photographs, certificates, everything about her past life. Everything is collected coldly, mercilessly, like a dossier. At the very bottom of the box lies a clean white envelope. Inside is a single photograph and a short note from Song. The photo shows a young Korean woman in a traditional hanbok. She is standing in the garden in front of an old house. The woman resembles her mother, but Aisha barely remembers her mother. She died when Aisha was 5. The note has just 3 handwritten words, now we're even. She sits, clutching the photograph. The ice in her veins gives way to the heat of understanding. Song wasn't just digging, he was sharing. He was showing. I know everything about you, but I'm vulnerable too. I have a past I hide too. It's not a threat. It's an offer of stalemate, a draw. He acknowledges her strength, since she didn't fall for the initial ploys. And he suggests they stop before anyone reveals truly painful secrets. She places the photograph on the table. She looks at it. At the woman's face, she's only seen in 2 other faded photographs. She has no questions for Song. She doesn't want to know how he found this. She wants it to stop. She picks up the phone and dials Song's number, the one he left in his very first letter. He picks up immediately, as if he'd been waiting. I received the box, she says without preamble. And? The game is over. Your inheritance is of no interest to me. Mine shouldn't be of any interest to you either. We're even. There's silence on the other end of the line. Then a short, dry sound, like a laugh. We're done. But remember, Aisha, in our world, a pause isn't peace. It's a regrouping of forces. I remember, she says and hangs up. She orders Jong to dispose of the box and its contents. She doesn't want to see it. But before she hands it over, she looks again at the photograph of the woman in the hanbok. For a second, she thinks she's smiling. Aisha carefully places the photograph in her inside jacket pocket. Not as proof. As a reminder that she did have something before Jamal, before this life. Something of her own. She leaves the gallery. It's dark outside. Jong follows her at a respectful distance. She feels tired, but also strangely light. Another round is over. She's secured her territory, and she's learned something important. Even someone like Song has something to lose, and that knowledge is a weapon more powerful than any dossier. She gets into the car and gives the order to go home, not to the penthouse, but to her new apartment, the one she bought a month ago, small, but hers. She looks out the window at the flickering lights. There's a photograph in her pocket, and in her head, there's a cold confidence. She's passed another test, and she's emerged from it not broken, but even stronger. A pause is not peace, but it is a time to prepare for the next move, and she will be ready.